Okay.
Okay, well, we're going to start with, we'll start with the round challah, which is right out of the oven here.
Beautiful.
It was, so this is, it's made for, and what our family does, have a round challah with raisins for Rosh Hashanah, which is usually in September. It's a Jewish New Year. And so it's traditional to have, instead of the normal braided challah, to have the round challah to make it special for a holiday. And also the symbolism is of the continuity of a circle. You know, a year ends, a year begins, the seasons change, and one leads to another. So that's what, you know, kind of the symbolism of the challah. And it also has the raisins to make it special, but also it's sweet. It's sweeter to welcome in a sweet new year. So perfectly fine to do it for a calendar new year as well as the Jewish New Year.
Good.
So we can separate it. We can.
It's a little hot right now.
Okay, well then
yeah,
we can wait and you can have it a little bit later.
Your muffins are warm, so try those, and then in a couple minutes I'll pull this apart. It's too hot even for my hands. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So the whole challah thing, I mean, the idea of a challah, what challah means is, and it's in the book of Numbers, is that you take a bit of the bread, you throw it in the fire as a sacrifice. And so Orthodox families will do that even now. They'll make their challah, they'll take some of the bread and, you know, burn it to make it kind of a offering kind of thing. But now people generally call the bread the challah, not the piece that goes into the non-existent fire. This kind of the braiding challah started in southern Germany and Austria in the 1400s. And that time period is important, and it relates actually to the Stollen too. This, and we'll get into that more when we talk about the yeasts. But it was a time when they were really kind of developing baking more. You know, they had enough ingredients, and they had, you know, some changes in the yeast so that they were able to really experiment with bread. The round challah goes back to the 1700s in Ukraine, and what we do with it is we go down, for our families goes down to Gansett Beach, where you have this beautiful sunset, one of the few places on the East Coast where you can actually see the sunset, and then we, the holiday begins at sunset. So we say some prayers, we have some wine, and then you dip the challah and apples in honey, again to welcome in a sweet new year. And it's always been kind of magical to be down at the beach. I'm sure you all have your beach experience, but I remember one year we're in with some friends, we had little lawn chairs there watching the thing.
Plates, please,
and
so
all these seagulls came up. I'm not making this up, but they were all like, they kind of came and they were in the water, like watching the whole thing. It was like they were, you know, part of the ceremony. So
I think they were reincarnations of all relatives and friends and Woods Hole people.
Maybe. So it has a special memory, this the challah. So what we're going to do, so you'll get this.
I will. Yeah, you're going to get some very soon.
Actually, I'm going to get, is there a glass of water?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So this has apples in it, and as I prepared for the class, I've always kind of wondered about what apple to use when you're baking. You know, what variety to use. You read different things, you know, does it matter or not? And so I took the opportunity for this class to explore that. And so what I'd say when you read it in cookbooks, what you're looking for in apple for baking. So something like this in a bread or a cake as opposed to a pie or a torte or something like that is an apple that's crispy, so it keeps its texture with baking, and that it's not juicy because the juices just mess up the, the cake or whatever and makes it soggy. So here's a little bit. So people who study apples, there's a big literature about apples. So if you wanted this crisp but not juicy apple, and you could look in the cell structure of an apple, what would you be looking for? So apples, like all living things, are made up of cells. And here's a sample, of a cell. It's got, like all cells, it's got a nucleus, it's got cytoplasm. The black line is the cell membrane. But what's different about plant cells as opposed to human cells or mammalian cells is that they have a cell wall that provides the structure. So that's the kind of the green box around the cells. So apples that have large cells, they are juicier because they're just filled with more fluid, and they just can build up a lot more liquid. And what it makes it crisper is how tight these junctions are between the cell walls. So I'm going to give some examples of this. They've done electron microscopy of this, which always has kind of a warm spot in my heart, electron microscopy, because MBL has been really forefront of new techniques in electron microscopy. That's a way of looking. You get a much higher magnification than a light microscope. There's light microscopes in probably every elementary school in the country, but EM is a special technique. And we have a friend, Grace, Tom Rees, who just passed away, but he was one of the leaders in the field of looking at this EM structure of squid axons and other things. So, but, and for they were looking at, kind of functional things, but for apples, it's a little easier. So this is a EM structure of a Granny Smith apple. I'm going to start to pass those around. And, if you've cooked with Granny Smith, you know that they're very firm. They're often used. They're often suggested for baking because of their crispness and able to keep their structure with baking. And so this is the junction between the two cell walls. And it's tight, it's narrow, and you can even see some little proteins kind of connecting the two things together. So that, matches with, your sensory experience with them. And then here on the other extreme would be Macintosh apples. And I'll pass that around. So here is the cell walls. And you can see, it's wider. They're just not as tightly bound together. For whatever reason, they were probably selected for other reasons than firmness. So I definitely wouldn't use a Macintosh when you're cooking.
Too much water.
Yeah, and it just would be becoming mushy when it's cooked. Here's another example of these are three different EM. And this first one is Firmagold, which would be another very crisp one, and you can kind of see the kind of orderly structure here. Honeycrisp is the other one, and Honeycrisp is juicy. You like Honeycrisp? Like me. Yeah, these are why there's we haven't, after, I don't know, hundreds of years of picking apples, there isn't one best apple because you choose things for different reasons. And so Honeycrisp is a great fresh eating apple, but probably not good for baking so much because, here it's got definitely bigger cells and it makes it juicier and, isn't as good that way. Now, and Janagold is a soft apple. It's kind of close to Golden Delicious. And you can see how its structure on this side is just kind of broken down. So that's, so what we are going to use is kind of a compromise. Here is, it's Pink Lady is the brand name. Crips Pink is its more original name, and it's Australia. They made this in Australia from a Golden Delicious and Lady Williams apple, and it has it matures over a very long time period. It really grows.
Will you take some of these home for Steve?
So it did well in Australia.
There's a plastic
I
container
imagine
there when
they
they
don't
cool
grow
off.
up
Fill
here
it up.
that much. They probably need to be a warmer climate. And besides the juiciness and the crispness, the other things which you're probably more familiar with is the brick score, which is how sweet an apple is. And they have, like, in the Windfall Market, they even have a little chart of
It's called the brick score, like B-R-I-C-K?
I think, like B-R-I-X, I think.
Oh,
And Granny Smith is the least sweet apple. And now, like when you're baking, I'd say for that parameter, it's just personal preference, how sweet you want your dessert to be. But, Granny Smith is really on the far tart side. So the Pink Lady it's not so juicy, and it's pretty firm, and it's sweeter than Honeycrisp. And here's just a picture of it as it's maturing, comparing it to Fuji apples. This doesn't really show the difference in the size of the things, but just all apples get kind of bigger cells as they mature. As you can, a really unripe apple is very, very hard. So that's the kind of the biology of the
or the chemistry, one or the other, yeah.
And I was going to say, we kind of digressed with all of that, but you came for a cooking class, so I don't want to forget.
But it's really helpful to know. It really is, I think.
So, yeah?
I'm just wondering, and I don't know if you want to answer questions now, but do your recipes identify the apple that we should use for this?
Well, when I wrote this, I was kind of, uninformed. And so I went with just what was written, and I think it had Golden Delicious there or something. But now I would be more, well, you'll see. So what you're eating is the Pink Lady.
Okay.
So you can see what you, yeah. So I think I'm going to keep going with that. So, but you came for the bread making lesson, and I'd say that I think of bread making as 3 different modules. There's the mixing the dough and kneading, then you have the first rise. Then for these breads, you have the shaping part, and then another rise. That would be the second module, and then you have the baking, which is the third module. Because you're all so smart, we're not going to do it sequentially. We're going to, just the way it works out.
Hopscotch around.
Yes. So we're going to do the second module right now with the challah bread, which is the shaping it. So you'll see how we made this before. Gail's going to show you how to, make the dough. But this is the dough after its first rise. And
it's a beautiful, rich dough that has a great feel. It has, to say nothing of taste. But it's got eggs and sugar and is it well?
No, yeah, it's not, it's, no, by this, I mean, you'll see,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of firm, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. It's certainly not very hydrated like a lot of the fast no-knead breads that you come across
Oh,
now.
and where's the spring form?
Does it need to be sprayed?
Yeah.
Well, yes,
Okay,
it's just washed.
okay. Spray it. You want?
Okay,
Spray
so you can use a 10-inch springform pan. That's what this was made out of. You can use a bundt pan. So this works well. Okay.
Because it really is almost a pull-apart bread. You know, I used a knife on it, but you can see it's kind of like a monkey bread. Sorry, I don't mean to insult you, but.
Okay. So then part of the recipe is to make the apple filling. And so it's got 2 cups of apples and 1 cup of raisins, and with some sugar and cinnamon. And it's best, I did this right before. It's best not to make it too far in advance because it'll get kind of soupy. So,
Okay.
and these are flame raisins, which I don't know if they are up here. There's one store down in Bethesda I like a lot that has them. So,
Yeah.
that variety?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a nice variety of raisin. So we've had the dough, it rose, and you can see that it's kind of forming, the little holes in it. The yeast has been doing its thing. So you just make it into a circle. I don't know if I wrote a dimension, maybe like 10 inches around, 10 inches.
So about the size of the pan, essentially? Anybody want more apples? Cheese, wine?
Then you put half of the filling
You pass them around or you already did?
No, I think
on
nobody said yes.
half of it. I don't think this has had. I think this is just a way of mixing the apples and the raisins in it. You can see it's just kind of mixed all in there. It's not like a layer thing. So. Then you fold it over, press it in, and then you go from a semicircle, you just try to mold it back into another circle. Which
If you're making this, make sure you do it when you're standing up. Don't sit and try to do it because you'll really ruin your shoulders. So most baking like this should really be done from putting some weight into it rather than not.
Okay. Okay.
And you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
So put the rest of it in here.
People always say, why don't you wear gloves? I can't wear gloves when I bake. I just can't. I want to feel it. I wanted to know I'm here. I wanted to feel the warmth. I just...
And these little things fall out. We're going to tuck them in later on. But now you fold it over again, kind of mush it around. Again, make it into a circle, about 10 inches.
It's a good way to get rid of the holiday stress.
And if anybody bothers you when you're doing it in the kitchen, pick up a piece of apple.
Okay, then you want, about okay. So now you've got, a circle with these apples and raisins kind of mixed in there. Then you want 16 pieces. It's kind of a circle, so cut it in quarters. And then each of the quarters in 4 pieces. Sharp knife helps. And then you kind of roll it from the outside. I guess this is like for people who make rugula. It's kind of the same thing. So you've got this little thing, and you can see the apples and raisins in there. And then I put it down, so with the little point down, it's good to have it with dough on the top
On the
and the
top.
bottom,
See that? See the difference?
so it doesn't get,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is the non-seam side, so, correct? On top,
Yeah.
the non-seam.
just so it doesn't get burned or stick or anything. You should be getting faster at doing this.
I wonder why. And then any of those cute little extra pieces can get sprinkled on top, and they get some color and add texture.
Yeah, and if some piece doesn't have that much of the apples, you can stick it
Stick it back in
in
like-
there.
Yeah.
Try to make a one layer.
And then as it rises, it's mushed together.
That's the technical term, right?
Mushed, yeah. It's like when I teach my peasant bread class, I say our technical term is plop. It's a beautiful dough, isn't it?
Yeah, this was
This is the one in the KitchenAid.
yeah. So we'll show.
We'll show you how to do that. It's pretty simple.
So I'm more favor bread machines, and Gail more the KitchenAid thing. I don't know who has a bread machine. Okay, well then that's nice. Grace lent us one of her bread machine. We're very thankful for that.
The reason that I don't like a bread machine, I had one for a while, many years ago I think, was because of the shape that the loaf came out in. I didn't like it being so standardized. I like to make things prettier and look a little different and all that kind of stuff. So what I did was get rid of it because I didn't like, as I said, the shape and the hole in the bottom, which is also sort of indicative of having used a bread machine. But you can certainly use it, and to great success, in just kneading dough and then taking it out. So stopping it after the kneading cycle or letting it rise
so that's
in
what
there,
I would.
however.
I
Yeah.
use it much more for that.
Yeah.
So I've gone around on the outside. I'm going to put some on the inside.
It's very interesting that you do it slice by slice. The question keeps popping up, why not kind of, roll it up and slice that into,
I suppose you could do that.
There are
Yeah.
breads for that, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like a spiral almost,
Yeah.
like
Oh, there
like a
must be,
jelly
I'm sure
roll.
there's a
Yes,
reason.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Well,
a
this is
jelly
such a-
roll thing.
Yeah, but this is such a traditional bread. I mean, this
Exactly.
has so much history attached to it that.
So I'm going to jam the rest of the raisins and apples in.
It's another technical term.
And then it goes to its second raising phase, and that is where it's nice to have it in. That phase is called the proofing phase, and it's nice to have it kind of warm, not too hot, warm, and to have it kind of moist by having a moist rag or
Yep.
over it.
Yep.
And I'll just show you.
Okay.
So you can see that on the bottom you can still see the pan on the bottom, and then kind of the marvels of yeast, those little holes will go away as the thing expands. So
Okay. Good.
okay, so that's module 2 for the challah.
Challah. Uh-huh.
And so
No pilots, right?
the other thing, so we're going to then, the next step we're going to talk about is the stollen.
Isn't that beautiful?
And so, I converted to Judaism, so our family goes through the Jewish holidays and celebrates Rosh Hashanah. But I grew up with celebrating Christmas, and this recipe came from, it's a German Christmas bread, and the recipe came from my grandmother.
How many are we?
And my mother would do the recipe
With
with a great exertion of flour and, I don't know, just things sticking in the thing. It was always tasted good, but it was like the ordeal of the day, and so maybe that's why I like bread machines. I can
That may
not
be.
have it be that big a production. And the stollen, I looked up the history, and I've said it, I don't even think it's worth knowing where the name comes from. I like the idea. I was told that it was like Jesus's blanket, that you were making, so, I'll just show.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so.
Jesus is the nuts.
Yeah, well, that's the part I don't like, is that some of the symbolism is, sometimes these are made with marzipan on the inside.
Yeah.
And so then you cross-section it. It's like, what
Why?
are you doing?
Why?
So
Yeah.
let's just say that you're making a blanket for Jesus
Okay.
as he's being, to take to the manger. Yes,
Okay.
swaddling clothes and,
To gift him at the manger.
Right.
Okay.
And so it's folded, unevenly. So you think of it as a folded blanket.
Yeah. And you especially only fold it right, leaving an inch around, so that some of these get really brown. You like that, you said.
Yeah.
And it also gives it a little bit more, it doesn't look like a calzone, So.
Yeah. And then the powdered sugar, I like it, kind of like the snow effect. And
Probably.
commercial ones are more, they're often
Here, you do it.
frosted.
You're younger than I am.
But part of this is that it's
No, do it right
not that sweet
See
a
it on
bread.
camera.
And so it's easier, well, depends on how much you like sweet things, but we would have it on Christmas morning with some fruit salad, so it was a special bread, but you didn't get so filled up that you couldn't eat the goose that was awaiting us later in the day. So it's kind of,
Sorry.
so it's
Sally, would you come
nice
around
in
here?
that way.
Sorry.
It's it did start in Germany in the 1400s, and it was in Germany, in Dresden, there was a overall in Catholic lands prohibition of putting in any kind of fattening, especially butter, during Advent in your bread. And the Dresden bakers persisted at asking the Pope for some dispensation from that rule because it wasn't very good for business. And finally, in 1427, he gave in, and there was a whole decree, an edict from the Pope allowing the butter in the stollen. And, it's kind of like when you look at
Just keep going.
history. It was kind of like economics and, kind of like taking over about that time. And the other thing that was kind of taking over, I'd said with the challah, was kind of they went with the, so I'm going to switch a little bit to the yeast, and talk a little bit about the history and science of yeast. There was a kind of a switch up until that time. It would really been, most breads was a kind of a sourdough process. I mean, it started back in the Egyptians where it was just like suddenly there was some yeast that got on, wet flour, and they could kind of capitalize on that for leavening. But then it kind of persisted in that way with just people would keep some starter set in their house and make bread with it. It wasn't probably, it was kind of hit or miss with how well it worked. But then in around the 1400s, then beer making became more pronounced, and that's also made with grains and with the same yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And so you could have a much more reproducible yeast coming from the beer making. So and both of these, and the same with wine, have kind of the same process. So the chemical process is the yeast chews up glucose and makes 2 molecules of carbon dioxide and 2 molecules of ethyl alcohol, ethanol. And in bread, the ethanol just gets burnt off, but the carbon dioxide is key to bread making. It's the thing that makes the hole in the bread. That's the little yeast, kind of blowing these bubbles in the bread. And I would say this is the only thing we cook that is with a living thing, so it makes it kind of interesting. The yeast is alive.
Yeah.
And just before that, so all you need for bread is flour, water, and yeast.
Salt.
And salt.
A little bit.
A little bit. Then the flour is interesting in that, just to keep going with the chemistry theme, the flour, when you add the water to the flour, it releases it causes the activation of the enzymes in the flour that breaks down the carbohydrates in the flour. So the flour doesn't have, it's not pure glucose. The yeast really needs single molecule glucose. But the enzymes break down the chains of sugars within the yeast, the amylase, to get the individual glucoses that then the yeast can chew up and blow up. So it's a kind of a nice, kind of symbiosis of chemistry and cooking. And then yeast, going back to kind of the history of yeast. So, they went for centuries with something from the brewery, that kind of yeast. And then it was in the 1900s where they got yeast cakes, which you can still buy. And they're okay. I mean, that was like a step forward, but they're kind of variable in, again, how well they worked. And so it was during World War II to, kind of normalize bread making for our soldiers. They dehydrated yeast. So this is active dry yeast. And that worked, that was a step forward.
Little cup.
And they did it with a kind of a higher heat, but it was certainly dehydrated the yeast. But you needed to activate it. So you'll see, even in this recipe, in older recipes where this yeast you need to put in water first and proof it. I don't know, do you want to do your demonstration?
I'm going to do that. We did this afternoon in the class, and it was just wonderful because the yeast was very happy, which made us very happy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is sold, so there's people use this.
Yep.
good.
No, it's fine. Okay, so about maybe a teaspoon of yeast, okay, and then a teaspoon of sugar. Anything in here? Nope, we're sugared out here. Brown sugar, any sugar. Brown sugar.
Here's some brown sugar.
Cool. Okay. Unfortunately, it's cold, but I think the yeast will be okay.
And it was with warm water. It kind of made cooking bread more mysterious. And I'd say, I always, wondered, is it too hot? Is it too cold? You don't want to kill the yeast, but you want them to get activated. So, while it was certainly an advance to have the active dry yeast, and they still sell the product, so this is...
So that's the old way right after people stopped using the cake yeast.
Yeah.
So they would use this yeast, which is not instant yeast. It's just active dry. And you are going to see that it's going to start to, last time it burped. Remember?
Yeah.
It just went whoop, and it was very cute. So that's what I was saying. That we made us happy because the yeast was happy. So we'll just keep an eye on that, but we know it's active because we've used it already.
Yeah.
So, and then do you want to go on to instant from there?
Yes. I mean, it's kind of amazing if you think about it. They're just waiting there in this jar for their moment in the sun of, getting their sugar and water, and then they're off to the races. But there's been then, after that, maybe in the past 20 years or so, there's been further advancement, maybe because of bread machines, but maybe just, science, that to have instant yeast. And it's instant, the same as rapid rise, is the same as bread machine yeast. So they're all kind of pretty much equivalent.
All finely milled, yeah.
Yes, so they're... They heat it, it's not heated as high as in this, so there's more yeast that are alive. But the main thing is that it's a finer milled yeast, so you don't have to go through this step. It's ready to go just when you put it in with all the other ingredients. You don't need to have the
Some
special
right there.
water
Let's see
thing.
if there's a difference, yeah. Yeah, I can see that they're just a little smaller. See that? So this is your regular active yeast, and then this is your instant yeast, which has been just processed, I think, a little bit more. You can buy sourdough also in, something's happening. I hope so.
So when you're measuring,
Yes.
is it same amount of yeast?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which one.
Always,
Right.
yes. And I started to say you can buy sourdough in dehydrated form also, and then hydrate it and have your active sourdough starter. Okay. Yes, so this, I just threw the rest of the yeast in rather than waste it, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So I don't really see any reason to ever buy anything but instant yeast. Even if you wanted to use an old recipe and you wanted to go through that step, it would still be active.
You just have to do this, that's all you
Yeah.
have to do. If the recipe says dissolve your yeast cake in warm water with a teaspoon of sugar, you can just do it, just treat it as if it were a yeast cake and do the same thing. And
Okay.
what's nice about it is it's cheaper. I mean, a jar like this is $7, $8, $9.99. When I first started buying them, they were $2.99, but that was in the 60s, so it's a long time ago. And it certainly has doubled and tripled. And it keeps for a very long time in your refrigerator or in your freezer, okay? And also, buying it in quantity is much cheaper. This is $10, and this is $4, what did I say, $5, $6, and it's only 4 ounces, and that's $10 for a pound. And like I said, because it lasts, it's really wonderful.
So,
And tell us about the yellow.
Okay, so then there's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
a further advancement for people who really make sweet breads. So, like I said, the yeast like sugar, they like glucose, that's their thing. But if it's too much glucose, so in a very sweet bread, then you have this osmotic effect that the sugar pulls the water, and the water, H2O, is all around these sugar molecules, and the yeast can't really pull it into inside to do their, metabolic reaction. And so they've found a yeast strain that doesn't need so much water, and they sell it as the yellow label.
I think it's a gold label or yellow,
gold
yeah,
label.
one or the other, but it's an SAF gold label, yellow label, as opposed to the SAF red label.
Right.
So that's better for sweet bread.
Yes.
Better for, yeah, I'm going to try it. I've never used it. I mean, it's sort of like the Cadillac of yeast or something. Is that what
Yeah,
it's supposed to
maybe.
be? Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
there's a lot with, yeast. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is a very commonly used in laboratories, and so it's not hard to imagine them, just testing it in low liquid conditions and selecting strains that did well.
Just spray this.
So that's
Spray it.
with
I'm
yeast.
gonna
we'll get back
send this home
to
with you. This is
the
your yeast
bread
that you're
making
gonna-
part.
Your dough that you're
So,
going to make something. Okay.
again, with this is module 2, this time of the Stollen. So this is then what it looks like in the bread machine. It's kind of puffed up. You start the dough with without the fruit in it, and then there's a little beeping thing that
Take that
happens
up.
kind of
Okay.
toward the end
Wrap
of
it
the kneading, and you add it then. I think it's just so it doesn't get kind of beaten up early on. So it kind of, and kind of lets the thing mix without having all these big chunks in there. So, so this is then the Stollen dough. It's pretty
I don't want to advertise that.
soft.
Yeah.
And so the fruit we used,
Just put it
so
there.
what my
Just put it there.
mother and grandmother used was the fruit cake things that you get in the store, the
Candied lemon,
Yeah.
orange,
kind of
cherries. That makes
unnaturally.
everybody hate fruitcake, right?
Yeah.
That's why people hate fruitcakes.
Yeah, so kind of like unnaturally red and green. I mean, who
And
are-
tasting yucky. Yeah.
So, but I wanted to keep the tradition going, so I'd always get that. But I just couldn't find it during COVID. The supply chain of fruitcake innards just wasn't there. So I thought, well, why am I even doing this? I mean, there's so many nice dried fruit you could add, where you kind of know what the thing is. And so then I did that. I added, I'd say the golden raisins are traditional with the Stollen, and not nuts. So just fruit. The nuts are in the middle layer, and so I mean that's something you can do. Just whatever your choice is, and then it was Charlotte that turned me on to this when she went to the mothership of King Arthur up in New Hampshire, or Vermont.
Vermont. Right on the border.
Okay. Okay. And then and then Gail ordered these things. They make these fruit combos. The one that you're tasting was this Yuletide cheer. That was, they say it's even good for Stollens. It has more lemon and orange peel, which this has orange rind in it too, so it kind of complements this. But this one, we ran out of cheer, I guess. So I'm trying this baker's fruit.
Which is more of, I think it's probably very similar. The thing is, it doesn't have the dried citrus rinds, and it also, to which they probably add this and then call it holiday cheer. So this is what you can get year round, and I think you can only get the Yuletide cheer at the holidays, obviously. So I don't know, but it's really quite wonderful. think. And then this one is the golden fruit cake, which we haven't used. We didn't use this because it has walnuts and that kind of stuff in it. I'm going to use it in my class on Saturday. We're doing advanced peasant bread, so I'm going to add this to it, and I think it'll be really nice. And of course, you can buy dried apricots, you know, buy dried prunes, you know, fruit dates, and chop them yourself and use them.
Yeah.
But this is easier for us today.
Yeah.
Right.
So instead of making one big stollen like this, I thought
pass
I'd
that
make
around?
2, cook a little faster. So
Oh.
you're just going to,
Pass this.
you just want a oval.
We're deviating from our usual, you know.
Yeah,
That's okay.
something.
Yeah. Change is good.
Well, you know, depending on how many people you have, you know, the big one's a lot of stollen.
Yeah, it's a lot of stolen. It is. Yeah. I want to show you one trick that we learned yesterday from our volunteer yesterday, and I just think that this is such a cool trick that I've been saying it's worth the price of admission. The cookbook and this trick that I'm going to show you is really worth what you've spent. So you very often when you're making yeast doughs, your dough is, especially a highly hydrated one, it sticks, and if you try to scrape it out, it doesn't work. You clog up your septic system. You can just ruin your sponge or your cleaning, you know, your scratchy things that you clean with. And what Colleen Wood showed us yesterday is to just, when you've got stuff sticking like this, you just take a little bit of flour on your fingers, and if it's stuck, you just rub it, and it releases it. Okay, so can you see? Yeah. Can you see that little piece that's stuck there? So I'm going to just put the flour, and look, it comes right off, and you don't have to do all of that craziness with all of the other stuff. So, yeah. And all the money that you save in redoing your septic systems, you could just send to Highfield.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, I have to rinse this off.
Okay, Vicki will do it.
Okay, so this is where we add a layer of almonds, sliced almonds in there, and these are roasted. We've heard there's different ways of roasting. I can't believe I spent so much of my adult life not roasting nuts before using them because they're so much better. I mean, why bother if you're not going to take some time with a different, the oven method, which is easier but fraught with forgetting that you put the nuts in, and there's a kind of a flash point for people who do it where you have like a few milliseconds once you smell the nuts to getting them out of the oven with them still like lightly brown like this as opposed to...
So don't sit down and pour a glass of wine. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Pay attention. Okay.
Or there's, you use a frying pan.
I use a skillet, yeah, but the reason I use a skillet is because I get distracted in the kitchen, and I often forget. So it's too expensive these days to forget those nuts. So I like to be able to visualize it, see it visually.
So I just made a oval with that, and I'm going to put some butter on half of it.
Pretty.
And then the almonds.
Yep, and then we're going to
Depending
fold
on-
it. Yesterday, we had stolen dough that was in the bread machine. For some reason, we hadn't rolled it out. It was done, I don't know, but I had this blob of beautiful stolen dough. So what I did here was, after we punched it down once, I put it in a greased bundt pan, and I baked it off. And are there any more pieces of it? I don't know. No, I think they've all been eaten.
Fish platter. Is that it?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, I was going to say somebody stole it. And, I always have to be worried somebody stole the stollen. But we have to be worried here because we tend to have little creatures every once in a while. But this is the one with the orange peel in it. And actually, I fed some toast with some good butter to both Charlotte and Teresa. So this is without nuts, just baked. It was a round, beautiful round bunt. And I sliced it up last night. We had it with soup, and it was so good. I brought it in to be able to show you, and we had some earlier. It's a little dry now, but this is definitely with the orange and the lemon peel. Okay. Just want to pass it around. Let's see. And
It's grown-up toast.
it's what? It's great toasted. Grown-up toast.
It has
Okay.
a sophistication.
Yes, yes. And your husband ate it, and
Yes, and he said it was better than our panettone.
Oh, really?
So
It's the
How did it get made into the stroller? Took the dough and popped it in a bun.
I took the dough. Teresa rolled it out into a cylinder, and we plopped it in. There we go, plop into the bundt pan. And then by the time I got it home, it was risen in my car, and I just popped it in the oven for half an hour. It was really very, very good.
Okay, well, I'm making the second one.
Also, great bread pudding. Can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, goodness, yeah, yeah. And the Stollen would make, with the nuts even, would make great bread
Yeah,
pudding too.
yeah.
There's no reason not to put nuts in bread pudding. And the challah, I mean, all of this is wonderful for leftovers. A word of advice is if you bake it and you're not giving it away, or you've got a lot of it and you're going to be keeping it like 48 hours or so, one of the things it's good to do is to slice it and wrap it in foil and then in plastic and put it in your freezer. And then you don't have to worry about taking out a chunk of bread, but you've got slices to be able to just throw them in the toaster. And that's really, especially if you get into baking a lot of bread. It's between that and my squirrels. And hopefully not the raccoons.
So this step is, again, putting butter on, and you can put as many nuts on. I like nuts, so I put a lot on. It does make the bread kind of fall apart when you pick it up. It makes it kind of into two pieces, so maybe that's a little bit of a negative. And, yeah, so
Teresa, you going to put that on here?
here,
Oh, there. Okay, you want to do it on two. Okay.
yeah. And then,
We'll
yeah,
cover this and let it rise a
Yeah.
little bit. Okay.
I'll just show, I mean,
Sure.
it's, like with the other thing, you don't want to cover it completely. You want to have a little rim, half an inch or so, 3/4 of an inch out there. And, it's kind of better so the nuts don't get brown, to have them kind of in the dough.
I think it's pretty. I like it. I like it like that. I've
Yeah.
always made just an oval when I've made Stollen. But I
That's
like that.
a little, like I said, it's not just one lump. It adds a little shape to it, something different. So
Spoons of butter.
Mhm.
here is Stollen number 2. Now we got into
Okay.
this discussion.
Remind me.
I don't know if people have opinions on parchment paper versus the silicone. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I like
So-
both.
I use
don't-
both.
Is there one time over another that you use one?
No, it's.
Whatever's there.
Yeah, lately I've been using my silicone pads more for the cookies. I make, oh my God, chickpea cookies. And I just found that they didn't stick as much to the silicone as even they would to the parchment. So, because chickpea cookies, there's like 5 ingredients in it. And I just found the silicone.
I'll cover that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're moving away, we're finishing up module 2, which is the proofing phase, where you get the second rise. And you want to keep it, they said, kind of moist and warm. And for these sweetbreads, you don't need to, it doesn't take that
I'm
long.
gonna need more, right?
I haven't saw, oh,
I just wanted to show you, that's
Yeah.
rising beautifully. See how you can almost not see the bottom, and there were all those spaces before? So, no. It's warm in here.
yeah, it's warm over there, so that's good. So now Gail's going to show you module 1 of the bread making.
Okay.
The bread machine, there's, you basically add all the ingredients in the beginning. You start with the
You walk
lick-
away and it's happy.
yeah, and then you don't have to melt the butter or anything. You just have the
Throw it all in.
throw it all in, and so we're not going to show you that, but this is the other method using a
Or by hand, if you were to do it by hand. So this is what the directions you would be following, which are, as I remember, the flour goes in last. So what is going to go in here is some melted butter that Vicky's doing for me. 4 tablespoons? Okay. But first I'm going to put in my sugar. Now, we discovered earlier today when we were reading the recipe is that this recipe calls for half a cup of sugar divided and then with another teaspoon. But you use the teaspoon for proofing the yeast. Okay? So you don't add to all of this. I'm going to make this yeast very happy. And give it some more sugar. Okay. Let's see what he does. Okay. Ooh, look at that. Wow.
Very happy.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to put in my sugar and salt and cinnamon and vanilla. You were right, I can do this in my sleep now. Vanilla. And I'm going to put the eggs. Can I get some, would you run some water hot, please, and give me half a cup? I like to, when I'm doing something like this, I like to beat my eggs separately, and I try not to do it by doing this, which I've done. I can't tell you how many cakes I've ruined by dropping the eggshell in. So, not good. So this is pretty simple because this is exactly what you would do if you were doing it by hand. So you would throw all that stuff in, make your liquid, and then add your flour. Probably even like as if you were making pasta, dump your flour on the board and put the liquid stuff in the middle and do that way. I got butter coming, Vicki? Okay. So I'm going to add to my hot water, just add the liquid. I could have done that with the 4 tablespoons. Thank you. With the vanilla as well. I could have added that to this liquid. Okay, so this goes here. And then put this in here. And I need my paddle, please, the metal paddle. This one is a nice one, all the recipes that call for scraping down your bowl. So this is your bowl scraper, whatever it is. Or you can use the regular all metal paddle. Okay. So I want to just make sure this gets all mixed together. Lock it. Let me tell you what happens if you don't lock it. We would all look like we were in a snowstorm. I just want to give this a chance to sort of mix a little bit, get the yeast to absorb some of what's there. And then we just add about 5 cups of flour.
We haven't talked about flour.
No, we haven't. We should.
Yeah. So we're using bread flour, the King Arthur bread flour.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're doing the unbleached bread flour. The bread flour has higher gluten content than all-purpose flour. So like, I think 16%
Salad.
versus
You put 5 cups of
13% or
flour
so
in
for
here? How much
all-purpose.
flour did you put in
And
there?
then
5
cake
cups?
flour's at the far other extreme where it's low in the gluten. The gluten's the protein, and gives the strength to the bread, so it then allows the air bubbles to form in it because the gluten provides some resistance to the bubbles. So even though the kneading in all of this is to kind of break up the gluten fibers and to, soften it some, you still want to have this high gluten content to make, a solid bread. Now, all-purpose flours, like the name implies, is all-purpose, so I mean, that would be fine to use in
I
the
think
bread.
for breads that you want to use unbleached flour if you can. I think the unbleached is better.
Yeah.
It's better for you. No chemicals. It's not. And a lot of flour companies now do all sorts of bread flours and fancy dancy. I have this one over here, which I decided to experiment with. It's a very high gluten flour. It's really lovely.
So if you use all-purpose flour,
Mhm.
would it be how would the final product would it be finer, would it be softer, would it be what the left?
Probably you'd have less, like,
My dough hook.
yeah, you'd have less
No,
of
the
these-
white one that goes with the machine.
holes in it. That would be my guess, or they'd be smaller. Like there's some kind of bigger holes in here that are from the gluten. And the cake flour would be really dense. You wouldn't get that. So
So if you're going to get into bread baking, I advise you to just use a good quality unbleached
yeah,
all-purpose flour. If you really get into it and you want to be really fancy and get those big holes and everything else, and then invest in some bread flour. Organic is fine if you want. I use organic with my sourdough because I usually kill sourdough, so I always try to baby it with spring water and expensive water and everything else, and good flour, organic flour. So let's see if I can get this.
Why you kill
Oh, I do it. My starter dies on me, and even when I'm trying to get it to rise, it doesn't always rise. I just find it very finicky, and it really depends on how good your starter is. I have a really good starter now, but if you don't have a good starter, it's such an exercise in futility, It really is.
I want to make that, but I'm afraid of the start.
Yeah. I know.
Do you have a name for your starter?
I do, of course.
What's your starter's name?
My starter at home is Yvette, because it was given to me by Eves, who came here and did our chair yoga this summer. So I named it Yvette. What's yours?
Mine is Doting Thomas, for Doubting Thomas. My husband's a Tom.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So my girlfriend gave me some of hers and some of her friends put together. One is
Yeah.
Fernando and the other one is Frodo.
Oh, how
so
cool.
I'm Doubting
Okay.
Thomas.
Okay.
Maybe that's where I went wrong. I've never named them.
That may be.
They know.
Okay. See, you can see that this has come together nicely, and I could either throw it. Do you want to do some hand
I can
kneading?
do some.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to do the dough hook, but I think let's give it the real thing here. Is that going to come together? Do you want me to sprinkle a little water on
Maybe
it?
a little water on it. I'll start and see what happens.
Okay. I was going to throw it in with the dough hook, but. So what I want to caution you about also are the other flours, which are the bleached flours, Gold Medal, Pillsbury, any of those. Most flours now will tell you whether they're bleached or unbleached, especially Bob's Red Mill. You want some water? Could we have some warm water in a cup? No, warm in a cup. Why did I put that in there? You don't have to do this amount of work.
Okay.
Okay.
I've never used bleached flour. What do you use bleached flour?
Well, it's really from recipes from the 50s and 60s as people started to do more baking and industrialization spread all over the country and we were able to do stuff. I have an interesting story that I'll tell you at the end about old-fashioned cookies and using regular flour. A lot of people like the bleached flour. You know, a lot of people swear by it. It's what they either grew up with or their mother had it or whatever. Okay, just a little bit. And I didn't use all the flour here, so I don't know what's going on, but 00 flour? Yeah, for pizzas, and semolina flour, and yeah.
There's a flour for everything.
There it is. There definitely is. And so many, I mean, coconut flour, teff flour. Almond flour is really wonderful. What kind of chickpea flour? You know, wheat flour is really taking the back seat to a lot of stuff. Okay, I'm going to let this come together, and then I will show you what I'm going to do with it. Okay? Yeah. I'm used to very highly hydrated breads, so I'm not afraid of the water. And I can always add more flour. Okay.
May I ask a question
Of
in regards
course.
to backing up with the bread machine? So in my bread machine, I don't have one as nice as that, but when it finishes the kneading part, I can actually take it out and then cook it in the oven?
Yeah. I mean,
Shape
Alright,
it.
Sorry, that was just my head just flew this much.
Yes. You shape it into whatever you want to shape it
I'm
into.
not really happy so far when I cook my bread in my bread.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
I've tried several different recipes. It's now in its box underneath my
Yeah.
counter, just looking at it. Like, "Can you use me again?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know." But maybe if I took it out.
Absolutely.
And kneaded it,
Absolutely.
and I would like it.
Oh, you would love it. You would love it.
it's like,
I need my other mixer blade.
yeah. Yeah, it's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours for the dough cycle. And
No, that one's fine.
sometimes you can, like they don't want it on like delayed
Yeah.
timing or something, but generally, yeah, I mean, they have the dough cycle, it stops, you know, and then you have some leeway when you get it out of the thing, and you don't
Give you
do,
some time, yeah.
and, yeah, no, it's much,
And I'm usually home when I'm baking it, so there's no reason why I can't.
yeah.
Bake it. I want to do that.
Okay. All right, I'm mixing it again because it's just not coming together the way I want it to. We have had absolutely no disasters so far.
Like, just like, we're not, you know,
We still have a few
45
things to
north
do.
minutes, you know?
So I'm just going to beat this, and then it's much better. What do you think? I added a couple tablespoons of water when I dumped that in?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
3. And a half.
Yeah. And now I could do the dough hook because it's really come together beautifully before it wasn't. Just giving it a little bit more stuff on the bottom. Okay. All right, I'm just going to stop this, put it on the dough hook again, and knead it, and you can go on to what
Yeah.
your next step is, your next module, whatever.
Well, this is the,
Go ahead.
the start of it.
This is
And,
the very beginning.
yeah,
Do you remember when you first came in, there was a bowl here with that beautifully domed golden
Yeah.
dough? That's what this will be. After kneading, after rising, after all that stuff.
So I have a question.
Of course.
Now that it's winter, with our kitchens being cold,
Mm.
what is the best way? Like to heat the oven a little bit, because I've done that before and had it a little too hot.
Good.
And how do you get your dough to rise properly? For my sourdoughs, I just brought a seed back to take on that.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So, cause I wanted to keep it warm, but what is your suggestion?
So I learned this from
I mean,
Gail,
this
you
kitchen's
can-
warm, but
I too turn my oven to 350 for 1 minute and then turn it off. And that makes my proofing station for me for the most part. A nice way to do it is to take a shallow bowl a little bit bigger than this. It's okay. Yeah, it'll come together. Did you do this one? Turkey head.
Wait, this is the second class. We're a little punchy.
It's the third one. What was I saying?
about proofing with the water.
bowl and then you put,
Oh,
do you put more
take the bowl a little bit larger than this and fill it with water. Put it in your microwave and bring it to a boil in the microwave. Okay, you're creating a lovely, moist environment for the bread to rise. And then open the door, turn off the microwave, obviously, and put your bread over the bowl. And just let it sit in there. And the moisture, everything will just bring it right up in the microwave. But the microwave isn't on after you've boiled your water. It's just that it's a small thing, a small vessel. So it's much easier to keep warm. I like to do my oven. I trust it more. Sometimes I get nervous about my microwave, but you can do either way. And it's on the internet. It's certainly one of the hacks that has been around for a while. Okay. Answer your question?
It did,
Okay.
because like with the sourdough, you have a smaller amount, and I've been using my candle warmer, how you can do the candle warmers where you put the candle underneath and it releases the scent without
No.
lighting the candles?
No.
They're beautiful, they're all in the stores now. It's a light, and it comes down for 8, 12, or 24 hours, and you decide how bright you want it to be, and it just heats the wax, and then you don't have the burning, you're worried about having a fire, but you can proof your dough under it, for a sourdough.
Wow.
But not,
So they-
but I didn't, with this I've had issues, so.
Huh.
Like a
Okay.
big dough.
Okay.
So you can
Okay.
deceive them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine. It's just give it a few more minutes. So I think we can just move on.
Yeah.
Because that's coming together beautifully. And then what's going to happen with this is after it's kneaded a little bit more, we're going to put it in a greased bowl. And Vicki is going to take it home and make some bread for her family.
Lucky you.
I
That's what you
know.
get for being a good
I know.
I'll take it.
Oh, let me leave this over here in case
So-
we need it.
Maybe
All right.
we'll look at our breads. This is the challah. We put this in first, and so it's filling it in. And
Look at that.
so we could,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Comes right back up.
so yeah. So the proofing, I mean, it's already risen, so when you do it after, it's probably, not that critical. They talk with the sweetbreads to kind of underproof it. This isn't the Great British Bake Off show. We don't have anybody criticize. So if you just did it like 30 minutes, it'd probably be just fine, and it's gonna, fill up more when you bake. I was reading that you can check by putting a little indentation, and if it comes halfway up, it's a good proofing. If it, if you let it go too long and it's just kind of, then it's just not going to pop back up. So this one I would say,
I think that's done. Ready to go in
Yeah.
the oven.